Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. This is episode number 167. And my name is Henry.
And I'm Paul.
This week we have two cult classic reviews for you. We have a review of Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers from 2012. And then we have a review of Paul Verhoeven. What's his last name?
Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah. That one. Showgirls.
What I said.
From 1995. And we're going to be doing two this week. And then depending on how things go, we might either touch on news. We also have a listener question that we might do this week or next week. It could be a kind of a long discussion, so we'll see how things go. But we will get to it, so don't worry. Dear listener who wrote us. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. Well, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well, not too terribly much to report, waiting until I get the second shot, just getting by day, watching things, doing a little bit of work, doing a little bit of writing, working in the yard. So how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Not too much new to report, really. I had a nice conversation with a really kind gas station cashier earlier today.
Oh, okay.
But he had a huge dilemma.
Okay.
He kind of randomly started telling me about how his church that he goes to, for the life of him, he could not figure out if it's located in town A or in town B. He has asked people of all different kinds. He says, okay, I think it's in this town, but actually other people say it's in this town. He has no idea where the church that he goes to is actually located. I said, buddy, I wish I could help you. It sounds like a zoning issue.
Has he just tried like Google?
Well, the thing is he had broken English. He seemed to be from the Middle East. I don't know if he was perhaps new to the area or something, but he was, desperately seeking answers. Sadly, I could not give them to him. I said, I know the whole place is kind of fucked up. Things are mixed up, but, that's the only thing new that's happened to me over the last week.
Okay. Well, our recording was technically a little bit postponed due to an essay that you had to write.
That's true.
How'd the essay go?
The essay went fine. I think it was for a jazz class that I'm taking in my school program.
Dance or music?
Music.
Oh, shame.
Yeah, for sure. And anyways, coincidentally, we either had to see a jazz performance, but of course that's not happening because of COVID, or we had to listen to a jazz podcast. Sadly, I couldn't listen to my own. That would have been nice. But so it was dealing with, we had to hear, why can't I talk today? We had to find a jazz podcast that had interviews as well as music and kind of analyze that and all that. And so the essay went fine. Thanks. Okay. I'm hoping. I don't have the grade yet, but I'll keep everybody updated on that one. So, yeah. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot to mention. Paul, anything for you?
No, I wish there was more exciting news, but pretty uneventful for the most part. I guess especially this week. It was really quiet.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. I guess with all that said, we can get into our first review, which is Spring Breakers. And we do have a clip, so take a listen.
Who are you?
My name's Alien. My real name's Al, but truth be told, I ain't from this planet, y'all.
Alien?
That's what they call me.
Why are you here?
I saw y'all in there. They like nice people. Thought maybe I'll bail you out.
Why?
Why not? Come on, y'all. Why acting suspicious? Get in.
Where are we going?
Go wherever you all want.
Cotty,
Got the right idea? Come on. I'll be your chauffeur. Y'all can play Beyonce.
All right. So, as I said, Spring Breakers came out in 2012. It's written and directed by Harmony Korine, and it stars James Franco, Selena Gomez, Vanessa Hudgens, Ashley Benson, Rachel Korine, Gucci Mane, Heather Morris. That's about it. And the synopsis is: 4 college girls hold up a restaurant in order to fund their spring break vacation. While partying, drinking, and taking drugs, they are arrested, only to be bailed out by a drug and arms dealer. So, this one I've kind of talked about a fair bit about over the course of the show or over the years, but this is our first Harmony Korine review of sorts. Paul, would you like to kick things off?
Sure.
Because I mean, we haven't really talked about, either on or off the podcast, we haven't really talked about Harmony Korine much.
No, we haven't. I haven't seen a single other thing that Harmony Korine has done. The only other thing that I know of Harmony Korine is the story that Dave Letterman told James Franco of Harmony Korine stealing from Meryl Streep's purse back in like the 90s, I think it was. So that's pretty much all I know of Harmony Korine other than like this movie. I saw this movie when it first came out in theaters with some friends and my brother. And I'm pretty sure that I'm the only one who enjoyed it when I walked out of the theater. Not just amongst my group, but maybe potentially in the entire audience. I saw it in kind of like a bougie neighborhood in Charlotte, Ballantine. At a now closed theater, the Ballantine Theater that was in the... Anyway. And so...
R.I.P.
Yeah, you know. And so I really enjoyed it at the time. I thought that it was, you know, abrasive, but in like an interesting way. I thought that, you know, I hadn't seen anything quite like that, especially in a theater before. So at the time when it first came out, like I really dug it. But I hadn't really watched it since then. I just had this like nice memory in my head of enjoying Spring Breakers as this weird hedonist fantasy film. And so then I went back and I rewatched it, and it still worked for me, honestly. I thought that it was still great. I thought that it was still just as absurd as it was when I saw it the first time, but I don't think that it's intentionally trying to, you know, to be anything other than exactly what it is. So I really dig it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I had this movie, I think when Chloe and I did our top 25 films of the decade, this was in my like top 5 or top 10.
Okay.
And so similar to you, this is how I got introduced to Harmony Korine. I think I've seen every one of his other films. I'm pretty sure, but I'm a huge fan of him. And I absolutely love the movie. I think it has that, like, Harmony Korine has that great way of will examine some weird subculture, and it's like kind of a slice of life. And I think, as you said, it's so absurd. It has such a great energy to it. And you can see that Harmony Korine, with examining a culture like this, for lack of a better word, he has this like love-hate relationship with it. You can see he loves the kind of breaking free, breaking loose, and just doing whatever the hell you want. But nevertheless, you can also see that there is kind of a cautionary tale in there of people should not be doing these things, and there could be consequences one way or the other, whether it's directly to you or whether it's indirectly to someone else that you don't intend to. Yeah. And I think that's kind of put on the 4 women in the movie. But no, I think it's great. It's so, there's great comedy to it. I think the action sequences are excellent. James Franco is excellent in it. He's really out there, but I think he's very good. And I think for the most part, the 4 women in it are great as well. I think Vanessa Hudgens would probably be my favorite, with Rachel Korine probably being my least favorite. But yeah, I love it. I think it's my favorite of his films. And yeah, I mean, I have more to say about it, but yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
No, yeah, I'll definitely agree with all of it. You know, the character of Alien is just like such a perfect embodiment of the weird zeitgeist of the culture. You know, he is this kind of almost sort of, you know, Ziggy Stardust kind of figure. He, you know, he does kind of fit that, even though it's, you know, just as much of a put on as that was, of being this kind of weird embodiment of like a cultural feeling, you know, or a specific sort of tone. And here it's on full effect, and James Franco just is so in it in every single moment. And it's such a weird performance, but I absolutely enjoy every second of it. It's a shame that he didn't I don't even think he got nominated that year. I remember that they ran a campaign for him to get nominated. And it was like, consider this shit, was the campaign that they ran. But, you know, c'est la vie. No, I think that it's a really fun movie. I agree with you. I think, you know, Rachel Korine is probably the least polished, and so therefore and I think that comes across. And I think that she's also a little bit less sure of what to do with her character, whereas I think that like everyone else seems, I think, pretty sure of what they're doing with their character from moment to moment. I really enjoyed the kind of like, you know, the sort of threshold moments that constantly either proved that you were willing to go deeper into this strange land, or you were going to fall off and fall behind. You know, it's almost a little bit, and maybe this is kind of a weird comparison, it's a little bit almost Apocalypse Now, you know, the deeper into the jungle that you go, like the stranger it gets.
It's the same film.
Hearts of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, Spring Breakers, all the same story. So, you know, I think that it's a super interesting little, I guess, you know, there's so many places to take the discussion. Like, it's a really interesting little film. This was right when Vanessa Hudgens was kind of like breaking out of the Disney phase as well, sort of from her career. And I think that she does a really good job here. I'll agree with you on that one. But the energy of this film is just palpable. You know, it's 90 minutes, but like it definitely is a movie that you really have to sit and sort of chew on and think about, I think, a little bit when you're done watching it.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing about Rachel Korine, and more so Harmony, while I am totally for having one of your kids in a movie, it's pretty strange how she's used in his film. Like, she's constantly getting naked, doing drugs, like teasing people to have sex with her. It's kind of an odd sexualization of your own daughter. Yeah. That part. Fair. And now, even just buying what you said about Harmony Korine earlier, it kind of makes sense knowing who he is. He seems pretty weird. But that part on this watch, I was like, that is a little strange. I hadn't really thought of that much. But no, in terms of like scenes, like even the opening montage with the Skrillex song is amazing. The pistol blowjob, great stuff. Yeah. The Britney Spears song montage and sing along is excellent. And he just has a great ability to create these unique visuals, whether it's with colors or just odd designs. And he, again, I think in many ways he's able to, it's like bittersweet a lot of the time. Like, you can see the characters in the movie having fun, but he's able to portray it in a way to where you feel it feels kind of ominous as you're watching it. It doesn't totally feel like it's okay to do this, you know? And I think that's what works. Whereas I think other directors might not have that ability to, it might just come across as self-indulgent. Here, let's do whatever the hell we want. Yeah. You know, movie ends. But in this, it's like, you can actually think about how they're being portrayed. And I think that's what makes it work.
Well, and I think that the only reason that our characters, you know, getting into spoiler territory, are really able to get away with it, if you will, at the end is really just because, you know, everyone dies except for them, you know, in that particular instance, you know. So it's this final climactic moment where the very embodiment of everything that they've been going through or searching for, dies. And, you know, they say their final goodbye to it, go through, finish out this last moment of just like rampant fantasy, you know, because very early on in the movie, they start out and they rob the restaurant, but it's kind of a put on, you know, to a certain extent. It's a fake gun, you know, they're not trying to hurt anyone. And then later on, you know, they're like, it's just like a video game. It's just like a video game. And so then they finish it out in this climactic Grand Theft Auto-esque, you know, neon shootout.
Yeah.
And so then they're able to finally, like, you know, purge themselves of this weird, wild, abandoned spirit that they have, you know, this restlessness that they can't shake. And then they're able to sort of return back to life. And I think that because they were willing to see it sort of all the way through, I think that they have a very different takeaway of the experience than of the two that left.
Right.
Earlier.
Yeah, that's a good point. And on that, I do like how when, again, getting into spoilers here, when Selena Gomez and Rachel Korine leave, I like how that's the last you see of them. It doesn't cut back to them getting back to their place and living their life. It's like when they're out of the two other friends' minds, that's it.
Yeah,
you know, they're
out of
gone.
sight, out of mind.
Yeah. And so I think that is effective, and that's a good point. I mean, considering how absurd the movie is, it's okay. I mean, the final shootout is a bit ridiculous, how they're able to just kind of go through this huge mansion, but you know, it's more so fun to watch than anything. And I like the build up to that as well. But no, I mean, he just has an ability to, like, his writing is so strange, almost like similar to someone like Tarantino. He can just come up with great, like, one-liners and just things that are totally out there. And so, yeah, I think also with Harmony Korine, he always or oftentimes uses non-actors and real situations. Because I think in this, clearly, they were actually at spring break, or at least incorporated real parties and real people. And so that's something that I think I like about him a lot in across all of his movies.
Yeah. No, like, he definitely, you know, it feels just as weird and wild. Like, you know, I didn't go to anything obviously as wild as this, but, like, you know, I've definitely been to some parties that have gotten to some weird places and gotten out of hand before. And, you know, it doesn't sanitize any of that, you know, and that's something that it takes everything that it wants to tackle and sort of tackles it head on. You know, nothing feels too scrubbed clean.
Yeah.
So I also think that he uses montage and sort of repetition of audio beats really, really effectively, almost in like a multimedia art kind of piece way, you know, where it has that hypnotic trance-like state to it. It's a really good movie. I like it a lot.
Yeah. And I do like how, in terms of being kind of a cautionary tale of, like, it'll show how there are some people who want to go to spring break to have fun and break loose, and that's it. But there are also people down there who will or who want to take advantage of others, you know, if the opportunity arises. And so, again, I think that factors into the commentary of the movie, which I think really works.
No, absolutely. No, I just think it absolutely, you know, I can't speak for all of his other movies, but I think that with this in particular, you know, he absolutely, you know, if this was what he intended, I hope this was what he intended, because he nailed it. You know, if this was a swing and a miss for him, you know, it was a hit for me. So I think that it was really good. I really liked it.
Yeah. And I will say, having seen all of his movies, this one, it's kind of probably one of the most accessible. But if you haven't seen any Harmony Korine films, I would watch The Beach Bum, his most recent film with Matthew McConaughey. That one is probably the most normal, because if you go before Spring Breakers is when you get into the really weird stuff. Not to say it's bad, but it's really weird to have that be your first exposure to his films. Yeah, it's worth getting into for sure, but you got to do it in the right way.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like, you know, certain writers or painters have, you know, certain periods where they're into hard drugs or narcotics or something that, makes some of their work a little bit harder to get into.
Yeah.
They really just sort of latched on to whatever headspace they were in when they created that art.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and when he made this, he was apparently sober at the time. And I think he still might be. And so that might also be a reflection in some of his more recent works being a little bit more accessible.
Yeah. Anything else about Spring Breakers, Paul? It's worth a watch.
No, yeah, I'll say this. Neither of the movies that we watched, as with all cult films, are necessarily for everyone. But if you're wanting something that, is kind of breaking away from everything else that you're watching right now and is going to be a completely different experience than what you're watching right now, but will be very, very abrasive and in your face and aggressive about it, then I think Spring Breakers could definitely be right up your alley.
Yeah. And last thing I will say, I think that Harmony Korine is someone who is very polarizing, but nevertheless, I can understand why someone would love him and why someone would hate him. I have a coworker who hates Harmony Korine. Yeah. And I can understand that. But I also can see why someone would love him genuinely, like I do. So, yeah, he's worth a look, but be careful.
Asterisks,
Yeah. So, cool. Okay, out of 5 stars, Paul, it's a 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go 5.
Nice.
I think, is that my first 5 on here?
It might be.
I think Mank I maybe gave a 5.
That's right. Yeah, I think
I gave Mank a 5.
Yeah.
It's a rare stamp. Good for it.
Yeah. So, cool. I guess we can move on to our second review, which is Showgirls, and we also have a clip for this one, so take a listen.
I don't know what all this stuff is.
I'll order for you.
Don't they have brown rice and vegetables?
Do you like brown rice and vegetables?
Yeah,
You do.
sort of.
Really?
It's worse than dog food. It is.
I've had dog food.
You have?
Mm-hmm. Long time ago. Doggy chow. Oh, I used to love doggy chow.
I used to love doggy chow too.
All right. So, again, Showgirls came out in 1995, ages ago, and it's directed by Paul Verhoeven. It stars Elizabeth Berkley, Kyle MacLachlan, Gina Gershon, Glenn Plummer, Robert Davey, Alan Ratchins, Gina Rivera. Am I missing anybody?
No, that sounds like everyone.
Yeah. And the synopsis is Nomi, a young drifter, arrives in Las Vegas to become a dancer and soon sets about clawing and pushing her way to become the top of the Vegas Showgirls. So this one was one Paul suggested, and it's had quite a reputation over the years. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a documentary recently that came out about it. And so it's had quite a status and reputation over the years. So, Paul, how do you want to kick this off?
Well, I mean, I started the last one. Do you want to start this one?
Sure. So the first thing I'll mention, this was a first time watch for me.
Me as well.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. So I had heard about this one over the years, and I knew about its like NC-17 rating and all these things, and that people hated it, thought it was terrible. And gosh, it's a hard film to say. I wouldn't say I loved it, and I wouldn't say I hated it. There were parts of it I liked. And I think some of the commentary or the perspectives are slightly off. But I think that Elizabeth Berkley was awesome in it. I think she carried it so well. and she's so charismatic. I thought her performance was great. And I like the kind of Star is Born story arc of the rise and fall. And so overall, I liked it. It was a little long-winded for me. I thought it was a little long. There were parts that dragged, and I guess one issue is I didn't love being with the majority of the characters. And so whenever it veered off from Elizabeth Berkley, I became much less interested. So I kind of had an up and down experience with it.
Okay. No, I can definitely understand all that. So this was a first watch for me. I actually kind of picked it because I have been curious about it. Like, you know, I remember being a kid and like vaguely hearing, not like back in 95, but in like the years shortly thereafter, I remember Showgirls being something that was like a cultural touchstone that people referenced a lot, kind of like OJ. You know, it was like something that, even though I was a kid and didn't completely get everything about it, like it was something that I just heard a lot about. And so I've always had like a curiosity, but I've never had like an opportunity to sort of, you know, just sit down and dedicate myself to watching Showgirls. And so you had suggested Spring Breakers. I knew that this was kind of, you know, another pulpy, weird, kitschy, love it or hate it movie. And so I decided that, you know, it would make a good companion piece to it. I really, really enjoyed it a lot. I don't ultimately enjoy it as much as Spring Breakers, but I think that it is really very successful. For me, it feels like Boogie Nights, but with a more European sensibility in terms of how outlandish it can be.
Sure.
And sort of Baroque. But I felt like it had a lot of that same vibe for me. You know, let's take this lifestyle that looks so glitzy and glamorous, but also so scandalous and titillating, and do all of that for like the first hour. And then the next hour is going to be the sort of plunge into the darkness, you know, and show the dark underbelly, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll agree with you. You know, I thought Elizabeth Berkley did a great job. She was... And funnily enough, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, she was kind of in a similar boat as Vanessa Hudgens, where she had been like a child star who had been like a heartthrob on a sitcom growing up in front of the camera, and was trying to get more into her film career and really take off, you know, afterwards. And the sort of reception of this movie definitely was one of the things that, you know, put a little bit of a break on that, which is a shame because I thought that she did a great job. I think she can be a little overdramatic in the beginning. It's kind of like Jack Nicholson, you know, that he's the bad guy at the beginning of The Shining. You know that there's something wrong with her very early on just because she does react so big at such little things. Kyle MacLachlan does a great job. He's one of my favorite character actors that I've seen in things over the years. I love him in How I Met Your Mother as the captain. So no, I really had a good time with this. If I had any complaint, I'll agree with you. You know, it definitely felt like there could have been a little bit of some shortening, you know, and a little bit of tightening. It needs polish. For sure.
Yeah. I did like him a lot in it. And I think the relationship between him and Elizabeth Berkley, as well as with the top dancer, the older dancer, I think that was really interesting as well. I also, one thing that I noticed about the movie, I'm guessing it's intentional in a sense, the movie, there is so much nudity in the movie that it almost feels the most sexualized when characters have their clothes on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was something that my wife and I talked about. Like, at a certain point, the nudity is kind of almost like when you're backstage behind a show. Like, you just see it. Like, it's just happening around you. It becomes kind of like white noise almost. And yeah, you know, the infamous sex scene in the water with the waterfall and all of that.
Great stuff.
One of the funniest things to ever happen on film. If you haven't seen it and you don't necessarily want to watch the whole movie, that is a great clip. So, you know, that's not nearly as like sort of successfully erotic a moment as like when Kyle MacLachlan is fully clothed and Gina Gershon is fully clothed, and it's the private dance with Elizabeth Berkley.
Sure.
And so, like, you know, she's obviously naked, but two of our main characters throughout the scene are completely clothed throughout the whole thing. But like that has a more like, you know, sensual, you know, interesting effect as opposed to the pool scene, which just becomes like she's having an exorcism on top of this man in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting for sure.
Have you seen other Paul Verhoeven films like RoboCop? I know you Starship Troopers.
Seen all those.
Okay.
What else has he done?
Those are like the big ones that are more recognizable for people. You know, he's done some other stuff in Europe, but those are like some of his bigger American films. I think he did something more recently, but I'm blanking on it.
But yeah, I've seen those, and for the most part, I'm a fan of his.
Total Recall.
What's that?
Total Recall. That's another.
Oh yeah. Great movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I guess one of the criticisms against the movie were people trying to figure out, okay, is the movie misogynistic or is it a movie about misogyny? Which
no, that is a little unclear.
Yeah, which, you know, I think that at the end of the day, I think there are issues with it, as I've said. I think that one thing that kind of kept me going regardless was it was pretty much a story about a fairly decent person, not, you know, troubled person who's just trying to survive in a world of misogynists and assholes, you know?
Yeah.
And so that part, you know, you could kind of latch on to despite some of the perspectives and the commentary being off at times. I think some parts worked, other parts didn't, but I think it was more so Berkeley that helped push that through, you know?
Well, and like one thing that I think they really just should have committed a little bit further to was that it seemed like there was, you know, and this was something again that me and my wife talked about a lot. It definitely felt like there was a lot of romantic subtext between Nomi and Molly, her roommate. And I think that it might have made some of her character and some of their relationship dynamic fallout and things like that a little bit more impactful if they had committed to kind of just like actually confirming that instead of just like having all of the subtext and just kind of, you know, skirting around it.
Yeah.
You know, it felt very, we're not going to address it, but it's around, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But, you know, despite my criticisms, it for the most part, it was very energetic and very fun at times, over the top, but mostly in a good way. I liked the Elizabeth Berkley, her obsession, as well as her roommate with potato chips. They're always trying to get potato chips. That's great.
No, you know, I don't know.
Point.
I don't know if they do potato chips at screenings of this, you know, like they do, you know, spoons and footballs at screenings of The Room. But
they should.
I think that it should now, you know, now that we've made a point of it.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
But no, you're right. It's over the top in all the ridiculous ways, you know, that it should be. But all of his films definitely speak to that. You know, Starship Troopers is a pretty over the top movie. RoboCop is a pretty over the top movie. But I think that he does all of that pretty effectively. And I think that, you know, obviously to varying degrees, certain things are much more effective than others. But I think overall, he always makes movies that are very much showing you outright what their themes are. You know, they're not being coy about what he's trying to talk about, you know. And I think that they're always very entertaining and always interesting and always socially conscious in some kind of way for the most part, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I did like how one aspect of the movie is it is showing the rise of this person who, at least at first, she thinks as she's rising up the line that she's becoming more powerful and more free. But in a sense, she's essentially just becoming more under the control of these men above them, you know? And so I think that was kind of interesting as to how the hierarchy works, where it's this kind of twisted idea of what people are getting to what they think they're getting.
Yeah, it's that gilded cage kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's, and you know, her actions always do have some sort of consequence. You know, she doesn't out that one woman with the braids for throwing the rocks to make the black dancer trip and break her knee or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then in turn, that woman doesn't tell when Nomi pushes Gina Gershon down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
But also now this woman knows that she did it and, you know, is willing to use that as blackmail leverage kind of thing to be like, hey, I should now be your backup dancer. You know, and it's kind of a little throwaway line, but like you see little moments all throughout where pretty much all of the decisions that she makes have some sort of consequence somewhere down the line that oftentimes seem good at first, and then it turns around and it's kind of a negative thing. Yeah.
I feel like Darren Aronofsky got a few tips for Black Swan from this. You know, I got some Black Swan vibes for sure.
Because all of those, you know, like Black Swan, The Wrestler, Whiplash, Boogie Nights, Showgirls, you know, and I guess in a certain weird way, Spring Breakers, less so Spring Breakers, but that group in particular are all about people of a very particular field trying to find some sort of perfect moment to express themselves in some kind of way and find authority and autonomy and whatever they idolize, you know, as peak them in their performance, in what they're doing. And oftentimes it ends up being to their detriment, this tumble down into this world, you know, to try and seek this thing always comes with consequences.
Yeah. This like an obsession with fame and power. Yeah. Yeah. But no, it's an interesting movie for sure. And it sticks with you in a variety of ways. And so I'm glad we decided to do this because I've been wanting to watch it for a while. I did like the final scene that it kind of loops back around. I like that a lot with the truck driver.
Well, and they do a few things to kind of echo it. So, you know, it starts with her getting picked up and taken into Vegas, and then picked up from Vegas and taken into LA by the same guy. But then also it's almost shot for shot, line for line, beat for beat, the same like announcement to the press of Nomi after her first night dancing, where the guy is like, we couldn't imagine this show without another star, you know? And it's almost exactly the exact same sequence of events. So they kind of do like two different bookended beats at the top and the end of the story.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched it again, you know, it's not for everyone. The NC-17 rating, I think, is definitely a little bit more of the times. Like if you've been on the internet even for, you know,
5 seconds.
Yeah, you know, you've seen just as insane a thing as you might have seen in Spring Breakers or this movie somewhere online. So like, you know, if you think that you can handle it, it's honestly like not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much the only other NC-17 film that I can think of is Shame with Michael Fassbender. Which is great. But yeah, it's not, I guess, you know, in perspective, in today's standards, it's not that bad.
No, I mean, the scene of, you know, fair warning of violence and sexual violence in particular, you know, the rape scene in the movie is pretty graphic and jarring. But also I think that it was very much meant to be. So if you can handle all of that, you know, fair warning, I think that it's an interesting movie, and I think that it is one that's worth watching, just as I do with Spring Breakers. Although this one does need another pass. It just needs a little bit of a buff.
Yeah. Needs a good buffing.
Just another round of polish, you know?
So, all right. Anything else about Showgirls in particular, Paul?
Oh, I think that it's funny that almost retroactively the strip club seems tame.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, this place that, you know, everyone thinks is going to be like an absolute scum joint, which like is not a great place to work by any means, on a certain level is kind of treated as almost like the quainter, kindler, gentler place that she once started.
Yeah.
Whereas now it has all the veneer of seeming nice, but is just as trashy, if not worse.
Yeah. The strip club is a family establishment in comparison.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I do love her with... I liked that every dress. That's another thing. I liked that every dress had the pop-out boobs.
Oh, yeah. Those yeah. The mother, quote unquote, character was a fun time.
Yeah, she was a highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah. Okay, well, out of 5 stars, Paul?
I'll go 4.
4 for me as well.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, now, well, Paul, what do you think? I mean, should we get to this listener question? It's a doozy. I'm excited to talk about it if you are, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, we can do the listener question. Just out of sheer curiosity, did you see the new Marvel trailer?
I haven't. Which one is this?
Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings, Legend of the 10 Rings trailer dropped today.
Oh, well, I mean, I can watch it in a second. We can do some news if you want. If you want to talk about it.
Nah, let's get into this question.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that you should go and give it a look.
Okay, well, and now is that a series or a film?
It's going to be the next movie. It comes out in September.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. So, all right. Well, yeah, let's get to our listener questions. So the filmbuds at gmail.com is where you can reach us at. Also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at filmbuds, as well as the filmbuds.com. And all that stuff is in the show notes if you need any clarification or anything like that. So if you're a new listener or if you've been listening for a while, sorry, I can't talk today. You can just send us anything, questions, comments. Love hearing from you. And thank you to everybody who has sent stuff. So the one we got this week is quite an interesting one. And I guess it has to do partly with some entertainment news. It comes from Mr. Upside. So there you go. And he says, "Dear H and P, the new Zack Snyder Army of the Dead film has resurrected my love of zombie entertainment. That being said, the big question I have for you two is how would you go about life if a zombie apocalypse were to suddenly begin? Where would you go? How would you act? Enjoy the podcast so much. Regards, Mr. Upside." Thanks, Mr. Upside.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, in terms of news, the Army of the Dead film, the new Zack Snyder movie is going to be coming on Netflix in a bit, and they just released the first trailer for it.
It's supposed to be in the same universe as his Dawn of the Dead.
Right. So, well, Paul, how do you want to tackle this? I mean, it's, it's a doozy.
Okay, do we want to set like a few sort of zombie parameters so that way we're dealing with like the same?
Please.
Okay,
yeah.
So what kind of zombies are we dealing with? Are we dealing with slow or fast?
Okay, now is this what we would prefer? Or is this what we would, is this just, are we deciding on one that I would prefer slow?
I mean, I would prefer slow.
I mean, so
we could flip a coin.
Okay. Do you have a coin by chance?
No, but I can go to Google. Google can flip a coin for me.
Google can do everything.
What do we want to make it? Heads slow, tails fast?
Perfect. Better be slow.
Ah, shit. We are unlucky. It is tails. We have fast zombies. Okay.
So now they're fast zombies, but now even for more clarification, are we talking like I Am Legend zombies where they're like superhuman almost? Or are we talking like the ones that we see in Army of the Dead where they're still kind of like walkers from The Walking Dead, but they're just quick?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit, we can make it more in that range to like a World War Z kind of range.
Okay. That's fair enough.
Okay. And I guess that's the only thing that we really needed to go off from there. If it's our if it's breaking out right now,
good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Well, so I mean, we're both in North Carolina. I'm in a more rural, small town, near a lot of countrysides and mountains, things like that. Whereas Paul, you're in a bigger city. Are you within the city, or are you more on the outskirts?
I'm about 20-30 minutes, depending on traffic, from downtown.
Okay.
I'm inside the loop. So
are you in a suburban kind of area, or?
Yeah, more suburban.
Okay.
So, it's I sit out with about an acre, like we're sitting on an acre of land right now.
Okay.
So we've got some space in between us.
Is that flat land? Could you see people coming?
It's hilly, and
Okay.
I am actually in the valley.
Okay.
Like I'm kind of in the slope down. Actually,
Thanks.
you know what? The first place that I'm going is my neighbor's house. I won't reveal his name because I think the government will come to my home. But he has done all kinds of stuff with like the government, federal and state and city governments. He's been involved with like security grids and security camera systems for like London and stuff like that. And the best way that I can describe his home's aesthetic is suburban fortress chic, complete with a massive motorized door that swings out. And he's up at the top of the hill, and he's got about 20 cameras on his house, some of which can record at night.
Nice.
He has a farm back there. He is like a gearhead sort of person. He has all kinds of equipment and shit. So that's actually probably the first place I'm going. Like if I'm sitting here right now and I get a text alert on my phone that's like, on top of, it turns out, COVID makes people that got it a year ago rise from the dead, and now we have zombies. What are you going to do? I'd immediately run up to Jeff's place probably. And, I just said his name. Oops. Oh, well.
Paul, that sounds perfect. I'm going to throw you a curveball, if that's
Okay.
all right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely no disrespect to Jeff. All right. I'm sure he's lovely.
Mhm.
What if you get there and he's turned? What if you're too late?
Well, I mean, if I get there and he's turned, then honestly, he's just trapped in that house. He's not getting out. So that's the good news.
But where do you go?
Then I think I probably have to go up north. So my general thought with zombies is that I either want to go to one of two places. I want to go to a place where there's going to be so much winter that during large parts of the year, as long as I can like plan and prep correctly, I can hunker down and they'll kind of be stiff, rigid, slower because of the freezing conditions. And then, you'll really be able to ride out like solid freeze, and then you'll only have to worry about like spring and summer and fall.
Right.
So the other thought that I have, go for it.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Is going to a place that's like incredibly hot and humid, because ultimately at the end of the day, and what I think that like is a lot of zombie movies kind of neglect to mention, is that undead flesh ultimately will start to slough away to a point of deterioration that like, even if the brain of that thing were still alive in an undead state, that it's practically just skeletal structure and tissue. It can't really do much of anything. It's just going to be like, ah. So then my other thought is to go to a place where bodies are potentially going to decompose at a very, very high rate. So something very sort of swampy, humid, where all of that flesh is just going to sort of rot and slough off. So that way, hopefully some of the environment helps naturally keep some numbers a little bit more down.
Yeah. Well, what about this? What would be, and now this is not fantasy, obviously, this is serious. What would be your weapon of choice of things you had around you or of things that if you perhaps picked it up, but is there something that you would say, I need that?
I mean, I do have guns nearby.
Okay.
They are in the home. If I didn't have guns, I actually have a baseball bat that I put nails in for a costume.
Perfect.
I went as Steve Harrington from Stranger Things when he shows up and he's got like the broken nose and everything, and he uses the nailed baseball bat. So I went for that and I put nails into a baseball bat, and I still have that. So that would actually probably be what I would start with.
Okay. So that's a pretty solid plan. You got a few.
How about you? This
few
makes
options.
me sound like a lunatic. Like nothing about this made me sound like a stable person.
No, I mean it's Paul. It's a zombie apocalypse. You gotta just go for it. You know.
Yeah.
Rules are out. Trying to think of other questions for you. Potential curveball.
What about you? What's your weapon? And where do you go?
So yeah, I'm in a small town. My house is fairly. It's a stone house. It's it's not well fortified in that way, but it's sturdy. I don't know if I would be able to stay here for that long. I am surrounded by a fair bit of people, so I think I would have herds roaming around. I don't think I would feel safe for very long. It does have a big yard, which is nice. I could kind of get a good viewpoint. I think if I had to choose, we have some friends up in the mountains who have a cabin that is used from time to time. I think I would go up there. It's fairly isolated. It's not something that you would just stumble upon. It's in the Boone Blowing Rock mountainous area of North Carolina. I think that would be pretty good high elevation, fairly well isolated. There are a few neighbors. Might have to figure that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Figure out their deal. So I think that would be the place I would go because it's small, it's sturdy, it's away. Weapon of choice, I think. I mean, I think guns would typically be what I would go for. I mean, we're in North Carolina, not that hard to come by, obviously. However, with these fast zombies, like in World War Z, those noises that can kill you. I mean, those one gunshot could get a huge swarm on you. Yeah. And so I think I would definitely have some. I might have a sword around here of some kind. I think I would definitely need to have some good a sword, perhaps a crowbar. I'm sure I have that in my garage.
Oh yeah.
So it wouldn't be anything too crazy, but I would have some things with me.
Okay, crowbar is interesting because I don't think that I would have crowbar. I would potentially use as a weapon, but I think that I would have like maybe a little crowbar, like a little cat's paw thing, more in like my go bag for breaking and entry purposes.
Sure.
I would try and mostly use it as much as I could for that, so that way I didn't then have to try and find other ways of like breaking into places and things like that. And I think that would be a good traversal tool. Yeah.
And, also I might go slightly Walking Dead. I think like a crossbow or a bow and arrow could also be a potential backup if need be. It's quiet. You can reuse arrows most of the time, not always.
Yeah.
And again, this area would be perfect for having that on hand.
Yeah.
So, but if all else fails, obviously we don't know exactly how the situation would be when it happens, when we find out. Paul, we could be doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Potentially come downstairs and it's a zombie apocalypse. We don't know. I mean, because like, for example, in Resident Evil, there's that opening scene of them having breakfast and then suddenly they're surrounded by them, So I guess that's the difficult thing. I would be sad to leave this area, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. My dad can, this is maybe my last thought on what I would do. My dad can fly. It would be a little bit dangerous, but if you could get to an airport and secure a plane, that's where the dangerous part would come into it. Because like a lot of people would probably try this, and probably a lot of stupid people who can't fly, but are like, I've played it in a game, but if you could get to a plane, then ideally a really great option would be to try and fly to some sort of, island location, even some sort of like uninhabited island, if you could find one, that's like a reserve or something, because like the laws of man no longer apply, and just try and hunker down and just sort of live off the land in a place that hopefully wouldn't have zombies on it, or if there were people on it, you could find some way to make an accord where you share the land together.
Never a good idea, Paul. Never ends well.
Well, and if everyone on the island is a zombie, then you can just go through, clear the island, and just sort of take it for yourself. So
that's a good point. Now, what size group would you travel in? Would you stay small, or would you try and call like Sky Tilly up, Jacob Bowers, Nick Delgadillo? Like, would you say, hey guys, zombie apocalypse, we got to get together?
I would certainly try and get together with certain people. I don't want the group to get too big, just because then it becomes a lot of democracy. Not saying that democracy is a bad thing, but like sometimes in like a high stress situation, you don't need a whole bunch of people second guessing every decision that's being made. You just need people who are making decisions. And so, I think that it would be good to try and keep the group smaller just for easier decision-making processes. And 2, I just think that I would understand if a lot of people were like, no, I'm getting out of here. Like, I don't care what you do. And I'd be like, no, I get that. So there are some people that I would try and get to. Obviously, right now, it'd be like everyone who's in my immediate vicinity. So it'd be like my parents, my wife. I would try and get in contact with my brother because he's in this area. I would probably try and get in contact with Nick because he's immediately nearby. My sister would be a real doozy because she's all the way in Texas. So if I was planning on going north, then that would probably be more of a discussion on trying to meet somewhere than trying to go down. Now, if I was planning on going south, then that's a different, issue altogether.
Sure.
What about you?
Probably stay small. I would check up on you, Paul, for sure.
We just need an odd number group.
Yeah.
We can't have an even number. We always have to have a tiebreaker vote.
Yeah. I guess I would prefer to stay small. I would check in on people, all film buds guests included. You guys would not be left alone. But I think at the end of the day, I would be similar to you, where smaller groups would be generally better. Not just for democracy reasons, but I think for speed and
it's just better in that kind of high stress situation. Once you're settled, then you can start talking about taking people on. Yeah. But when we're talking about the pure travel state, early days of zombiedom, smaller is better.
Yeah. So that's a decent start.
So there you have it, Mr. Upside.
Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else random that I would mention about a zombie apocalypse. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, again, you don't know until it happens. You have to think on your feet. I wish everyone the best.
Yeah, based though on how we handled, a disease that wasn't turning us into flesh-eating monsters, we're going to be a real shit show.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks again for the question, Mr. Upside. And the Film Buds podcast at gmail.com is where you can reach us again. And if anyone else has thoughts on their zombie apocalypse scenario and go-tos and strategies, please let us know, whether it's in the comments on social media or through email, whatever. Would love to hear your ideas so we could use them. So, all right. Well, Paul, what do you want to call it a day, or anything else you want to mention about stuff you watched, or any news, anything like that?
We could do like some picks of the week if you'd like.
Okay. What have
you want to take it away? Oh, okay.
No. You Paul, you go.
I finished out season 1 of Legend of Korra. I really enjoyed it. The show definitely has some things that are pretty different from some of the tones, textures, and like temperament of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But ultimately, I really, really enjoy it. I like it. Korra is a frustrating character, but I'm glad that it isn't that they tried to sort of recreate another Aang sort of situation. So I really like it. I enjoy it. I recently watched for date night. My wife and I did 2 movies. We did Spy Kids because it turned 20 this year. Holds up.
Really?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I hadn't seen it since like DVD when I was a kid. And so going back and rewatching it, I was a little bit nervous, but I was like, you know what? Like, especially compared to some other like children's stuff that's been out lately. Yeah, it really, for me, it still definitely worked. I really enjoyed it a lot.
We got to get into some Robert Rodriguez movies on the show.
No, we could definitely do that.
Yeah.
And then we watched the new movie Nobody with Bob Odenkirk.
Right.
Absolutely loved it.
Really?
Yeah. I love a good knockdown, drag-out fight, and this thing has just fantastic action. It's obvious that Bob Odenkirk really did the work on learning this stuff. And it pays off. The movie looks great. It's just as clean, simple fun as the first John Wick was. It didn't have all of the layers of stuff that get added onto John Wick that, even though I enjoy parts of it, I think it has also bogged down some of the John Wick storytelling. In a negative way. And so for me, this had just like all of the nice, clean, straightforward fun of like John Wick 1, So I definitely think that it's worth a watch. And then I think, what else have I watched? Oh, I watched Prometheus again recently.
Nice.
Great movie.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention I watched City of Lies.
Okay.
Which is the new Johnny Depp, Forrest Whitaker film.
Why?
I love Johnny Depp. God help me. I mean, it's a shame about everything that's been coming out with him, and I'm very sad about that. I mean, I grew up with his movies. I've always loved him, and so I pretty much will watch whatever he does. And so this one, it's this true story, or inspired by a true story of these murders in the 90s, I think is when it takes place. And Johnny Depp plays this kind of rough, hardened detective who's been obsessed with his case for years and never solved it. And Forrest Whitaker is a journalist who comes in to interview him about this case. And it was not very good. I wanted it to be. Johnny Depp, people are saying like this is his most like restrained and one of his more interesting performances recently. I think I kind of feel the opposite. I think this was one of his worst. It's just not very charismatic, pretty boring. I don't think it's entirely his fault. The whole movie is kind of drab and not very interesting. And so, I wasn't really expecting to like it, but I was sad it didn't turn out well.
Which would you rather watch, that or The Little Things? The
Little Things, because The Little Things, at least, again, God help me, Jared Leto is at least interesting in that, and so I would take. Although that has it would be tough. Well, The Little Things, because at least there were parts of The Little Things that I enjoyed. Whereas City of Lies, it felt like it was just flatlined from the opening scene, and at least I felt like The Little Things had a few high moments for me. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Then also, I'll mention I've been kind of in the mood for some reason to watch 70s and 80s horror films that I had not seen. And so I've seen the majority of the first or original films, but I haven't seen a lot of the sequels that came after a lot of these franchises. And I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Okay.
Paul, have you seen this?
No, I have not.
I love the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I like Tobe Hooper a fair bit overall. And I enjoyed this one as well. It's slightly more comedic and like dark comedy in it than the first one is. But the thing that struck me is the horror sequences and gore in this, even for today's standards, was mind-blowing. like I could not believe some of the stuff that was in this film for the time that it came out. It was,
Okay.
I mean, really effective and really interesting and very unsettling, but like it was, and it's not as good as the first one, but I was so like, just, it was crazy to see the amount of stuff in this movie for the era that it was released. It's really intense and really weird. It's not for everybody for sure. Neither is the first one, but it's really worth a watch if you like 70s and 80s horror films. It's probably one of my favorites of sequels, especially probably one of the better sequels.
Okay.
And then lastly, I watched the third and fourth Friday the 13th films.
Okay.
And both were okay. I think Friday the 13th is probably, in comparison to Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween, is probably my least favorite.
That's fair.
And so they're watchable, they're fun at times, but I think that they're not much more than that for me so far.
Are you gonna go all the way to Jason X?
Oh, for sure. Give me. I think I watched part 2 like last year.
Okay.
So it might be a while, Paul, but I will get there for sure. So I think that's about it for me.
No, those are all pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I guess that about does it. Paul, anything else you want to mention?
No. Next week, Mortal Kombat.
Yep.
All right. Do we want to do, since we did, I mentioned it when I talked about the recording on Instagram, we did Spring Breakers and Showgirls. Do we want to at some point do Magic Mike and Magic Mike 2?
I would love to.
Perfect.
Yeah. I guess I'll save it for that, but I would love to talk about those because I feel like my opinion and I feel like yours is kind of different from others potentially. So I would be curious to talk about those for sure. So cool. Yeah, I look forward to it. So yeah, Mortal Kombat for next week, and if we can get on any guests, that'd be awesome. We can just do some fishing around and see who we can get on. So cool. Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be a good one.
So, all right. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, Paul, man, as always, man, thanks for taking the time and for everything. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. And I definitely look forward to how much you're not going to enjoy Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, yeah, again, stay updated on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FilmBuds, filmbuds.com, and rate and review the show if you have not yet. And thank you so much for doing that for those who have. And yeah, well, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll see you next time.